I do hail from South Ogden, Utah, which is, I'm about 20 minutes away from the bottom of the ski lift, which is where I love to spend my spare time. I grew up in a really cool place called Alaska, which everyone always asks me, why did you leave Alaska? I'm like, because it's freaking 40 below right now, bro. And then in the middle of the summer, the sun never goes down, which sounds awesome until you want to sleep. And you're like, yeah. It was crazy when Andy reached out and he said, hey, I want you to talk. I just remember in my brain, Noelle telling me one time, she says, okay, if you're ever asked, sorry, it's the Noelle line, sorry. If you're ever asked to talk, you're either going to be asked to talk because you're going to help someone or you're going to give someone hope. So Haley, I just thought, Andy, you really want to give someone hope today, don't you? So the cool thing is, and I'm going to back up just a skosh. So I love what Noelle said. She said that she's made a lot of mistakes, but the one that she's not made is that she hasn't quit. And I'm very grateful that Noelle never quit. Because if she and Mike would have quit, I would have not been here, because my best friend Paul Epstein reached out to me, and he's the one that asked me, hey dude, I want you to come and work with me in insurance. Now, I don't know if you guys have gone on the Alliance YouTube page. It has some fantastic videos for you to watch. One of them, which is my favorite, I use it a lot when I'm talking to potential new agents, is this thing called Everyone Has a Story. Because I believe everyone does have a story. I mean, I know some of my favorite stories are from these people across the front of the stage. You know, I love Eric and Bobby Belair's story. It's one of the ones that touches my heart every time I watch it. Jake and Belle Krause are two of my heroes because they just who they are. You know, their patriotism, their service to our country. The fact that they're freaking badass parents. But everyone has a story. And, you know, the challenge is that, you know, sometimes we think that the story is you know, it's where we're at today. It's the problems, it's the challenges, it's the failures. We get hung up in the failures. We get hung up in the victories. I mean, I love when Jeff had that, you know, it's crazy. Like, there's that thought thing where like someone has anyone ever walked into a room and you can almost like tell, okay, who's the pissed off person? Like, you go, oh, and it's like you can like feel their energy or mojo or whatever you want to call it. Then you find the happy person, and then, or you're pulling something out of somebody's head. Like you come up and they say something and you're like, I know we're going to go shoot another bear, Spencer. It's all good. Because I know that was what Spencer was just thinking about. But when Jeff was doing his speech or his talk and he pulled up that picture of Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, I was thinking, oh, I need to talk about, you know, Uncle Rico. But who in the heck knows Napoleon Dynamite? I'm like, well, of course, Jeff Bright does. So when Jeff pulled Uncle Rico up, I realized, I'm like, Uncle Rico was that guy that was so stuck in the past on, I mean, he's a 38-year-old guy focusing on when he was 18. You know, and the past victories, which are great, but then there's the past failures. Sometimes we get hung up on those too. So to kind of talk about, you know, past victories, I think you need to acknowledge them first. So I had never really thought about it much until Venus and I were talking, and she reminded me that when I was very young, in fact, I got a picture of when I was young. I actually do have a picture. I actually was young at one time. I actually had hair. See, the crazy thing is that nobody believes I had hair. It was blonde. So I grew up in Alaska. My dad was a bush pilot, so that was a 46-inch pike up near Fort Yukon on the Yukon River. This is one of my favorite memories as a kid. But this 12-year-old boy here, he could barely talk. I had a severe speech impediment from the time I was 4. I was going to speech therapy from kindergarten through 8th grade. It was painful. Like, it would be painful for people to be around me because they would be standing there, and kids are kids. You know, well, I'm not going to use the word cruel. They're just kids. But the reality is that yeah, I was taunted. I was teased. I had thick Coke bottle glasses. I could barely talk. You know, it was Joe was how everyone knew me. It was bad because even some adults, you know, and they didn't mean anything by it, I'm sure. But it's when you're thinking about having a conversation with somebody, and what they do is that they start trying to help you speak to get you through your conversation. You're like, wow, man, that's tough. And I had forgotten because I've tuned so much of that out because of where I'm at today and where I finally was able to start talking about my junior year in high school, which was awesome because that was when I discovered girls. I found out that talking to them was not optional. It was a good idea. But then the other part was that I put that in the back of my head. But being able to go back now and acknowledge that, not make a big deal of it, just be like, hey, cool, that was who I was, and now I'm ready to move on to something else. So part of thinking about how people make you feel, I think that's an important. I love what Stephen was talking about in the sales side, guys. We're in the people business. We're in the feeling business. Like, remember, it doesn't matter sometimes even what you say. It matters how you make people feel. So I know sometimes, like, we always want to be impactful. Bobby, I want to, whatever I say today, I really want it to make an impact in your life. But I realize that it really matters more. Can you feel my heart? Can you feel that I care? When you're in the house, that's one of the biggest things that I had to learn. I didn't need to be the product guru. I just needed to be the guy that let you know that, hey, I'm here to help you. I actually care about you. One of the things that I love about Andy and Jane is I got to meet Spencer and Haley when they were young. And it's been so cool. I've been here 16 years, so I guess that makes me the old man now. It's crazy to think that I'm 50. When I came here, I was 34. And now I'm like, I remember these guys, and it's funny. I thought 34 was like old. I didn't think I'd live to see 40. And now I'm like, wow, I'm 50. But now looking and seeing, Haley and Spencer and the way that they've grown up and the life choices that they've made in their spouses. And I love when I heard Andy and Jane talk about, and this is when they were dating, and they're like, yeah, well, we instructed them to interview. Like, these guys had a plan for their kids. Now, I have 2 girls that I absolutely adore. They are, that's Michaela on the left and Lillian on the right. This was a few years ago. The thing that I didn't do, I realized quite so well, was I didn't necessarily teach them to interview. But, the cool thing is that they're making their way through the world and they're learning. Like, that's the best thing I can do for my kids. When I'm going to take us back to 30 years ago. I have to say that. I got married at 20. So I met the girl's mom. What I realize now is that God has your back. You're going to make some interesting choices in your life. Sometimes they're going to be amazing ones. And sometimes you're going to have a really great story, and chicks dig scarves. So I was dating this gal, and my dad. It's interesting when someone asks me. It's like, so dude, you're 20 years old. Like, my best friend called me up, and he says, so I hear you're getting married, and I'm like, yeah. He says, why didn't you tell me? Well, like, this is my best friend for, like, ever. And I didn't call Aaron and tell him. And I says, I I don't know, dude. He says, is she pregnant? I'm like, no. He says, why are you marrying her? I says, because my dad told me if I didn't, my mom and him were going to adopt her. Like it was a joke, but not really, because they really thought she was awesome. And truthfully, I'm just like, sure, that's what you're supposed to do. You're dating someone, that's the next thing. So what did I do? I dated. I married her. It was awesome. It was awesome for a few years until it wasn't. And, you know, in my family, we never talked about problems. We never talked about, you know, I love my folks. They're amazing people. They've been married 56 years. And in my family, no one gets divorced. So when you have problems, I never knew that some people have problems. And so we just glossed over the problems. And then we had a little girl. And, you know, I mean, it's, you know, you're married for a while and everything's cool. And then you have some more problems. And then we decide, well, heck, if one kid wasn't enough, let's have two. It sounds like a good time. I love both my daughters. They are amazing. I wouldn't give them back for anything. And the cool part is that after my second one was born, my wife started using opiates. She had a back injury, you know, and one thing led to another. Now this is when she came home with a bottle of pills this big, and I asked the doctor, I'm like, hey, is this going to be a problem? Doctor's like, don't worry about it. No problem. I'm like, shouldn't we talk about surgery? He says, hey, she's 28, man. You know, it's all good. You know, if she has if there's an addiction problem down the road, we'll deal with it then. That was the doctor's words. Okay, so I loved Alaska. You know what? I wasn't making enough money. I spent 10 years working 2 jobs, taking care of my kids, doing everything I was supposed to do. But the problem was that I was spending all my time working. I grew up doing hunting and fishing, right? I hadn't hunted and fished in a decade. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to move to the States. I'm going to try my hand down there. We're going to get something right. Best advice my uncle gave me, which is an advice I'm going to give new people here. He says, bro, what's the worst thing that happens? If you trip and fall, we'll help you get back up. I'm like, really? He says, dude, you're 32 years old. If you don't do something now, you're going to regret it when you're 50. Like, I think back, I'm so grateful I listened. The quality of the advice, who are you getting advice from? I'm going to tell you guys, the people I get my advice from the last 16 years have been the people in this front row, and it's been the best advice I've ever got. The power of association. I remember when Noelle said earlier, and it was something that I heard at 15 years old, is the quality of your life in 5 years, the person that you will be is going to be determined by the people that you associate with and the books that you read. So I'm like, cool. So when I came to the Alliance, I got to associate with awesome people. Now, when I moved to Phoenix, which is where I moved to, I started in the mortgage world. In the early 2000s, who's seen the, no, never mind. Should I ask who's seen The Wolf of Wall Street? Is that a bad thing? Okay, I saw The Wolf of Wall Street. Oh, okay. So The Wolf of Wall Street is, I mean, it's a cool movie. But the office I worked in was kind of like The Wolf of Wall Street. It was crazy. It was like, but it was no place to bring my kids. So my children did not associate with those people at all. So here I am working in the corporate world. This is before the Alliance. My wife is taking pain medication. I have to put her in rehab. Okay? I almost got fired because I had to take time off to take care of my children, which was nuts. Then my best friend Paul calls me and says, hey, I'm going to get in the insurance business. I think that you should. And I'm like, no, thank you. And he says, okay, well, I'm going to go do this. I'm like, oh, okay, awesome. But then he kept calling me. He's like, hey, I'm working today. I'm like, well, where are you at? He says, well, I'm in Lake Havasu helping families. Hey, I have this guy, Mike Leventovich, coming out to help me here in a couple weeks. So Mike came out to Phoenix to serve because that's what leaders do. He came out to meet me. I was nobody. I was just Paul's friend. So I got to meet Mike. I like this guy. I think he's cool. And Noelle tells me he's handsome. So Mike comes out and meets me, and then the next thing Mike says is, hey, listen, our CEO, Andy Albright's going to be out here in about 2 weeks, and I think that you should meet him. So back to back, I got to meet two amazing men, and I realized that that was one of the major things I'd been missing in my life. I'd been missing mentorship. I'd been missing leadership. The smartest thing that Paul did was that Paul introduced me to Mike Levitovich. Paul got his ego out of the way, and he I won't say he forced me, but he encouraged me strongly. Listen, I want you to build a strong relationship with Mike. And then Mike's like, Mike is such a humble leader. He's like, hey, I want to introduce you to Andy. And Mike, for 15 years, has pushed me into building a friendship and a relationship with Andy Albright. Guys, I don't know who you have is your leader. Maybe you're lucky enough to have Mike and Noel as your leader. Maybe it's maybe it's Jake and Bell Krause. Maybe it's Adam and Beth Katz. You know, whoever your leader is, get around them. And the smartest thing you can do is get your newest people to them as fast as possible. Because, I am not the secret to my team's success. I have such amazing leaders on my team. But it's been because leaders like Andy and Jane and Mike and Noel have gone and poured into my team time after time after time. When, when I couldn't necessarily do it. Because for the first 6 years I was in the Alliance, I was running production. That was my main thing. I was like, listen, I'm focused on personal production. I'm going to build relationships with these guys. But there's my brother Paul Epstein. I love that guy. He is the best guy ever. I am so grateful for Paul Epstein. So I've been running appointments and doing what I thought was the right thing. Okay, which again, we didn't talk much in my family, so I'm strong guy, strong man. I don't cry. I don't show weakness. I'll ask for coaching on business, and I love Mike and Noel because even today, the first words out of their mouth every week when we have a coaching call, "How you doing, bro? How are the girls?" It's the first thing we talk about. Why? Because they're my family. So when they ask me questions, it's not like, okay, what's your numbers? What's your team's numbers? Let's talk about fixing stuff. Let's talk about being better. It was always like, hey, how are you today? And I always said, oh man, I'm great. In fact, I had this great line. Noelle's the only one that ever caught it. She says, how you doing? I'm like, hey, if I was any better, I'd be twins. That's right. If you ever hear me say that, slap me in the mouth. Because it's bullshit. Let's just say it. It's like, in fact, the last time Noelle told me, she says, dude, cut the crap. What's going on? Because for me, I was always really good at hiding things. I thought vulnerability was like a swear word. So I was really good at talking to people about business, but it wasn't until Paul Roberts stood on this stage in 2013 and shared his freedom from getting free from alcohol that I actually could have a conversation with my wife and say, hey, listen, I haven't had, and I didn't say this, but in my heart, I'm like, hey, I realize that I haven't had this conversation with you because maybe I didn't have the guts to, but there's a problem. There's a problem with the amount of medications you're taking. There's a problem that's been going on for 10 years, and it's got to be fixed. And Paul came up on stage in front of everyone and admitted that, you know what, he's not perfect. He's flawed, and hey, he suffered, and he broke free of his addiction. So that was cool, but then I realized, wait a second, I need to share with the people who love me most. So I came to Mike and Noel and Andy and Jane, and I realized that I had never shared what was happening, but what I did was we came to them, we shared with them what was going on, and I was afraid of looking bad. So if any of you guys here have this thought process that, well, hey, I don't want to look bad. Maybe it's not a conscious thought. For me, it was never really a conscious thought. But I love what Adam Katz says. He says, I want the people who I respect to respect me. And for somehow I thought that if I showed weakness, I wouldn't be respected. And it was one of the greatest gifts when Andy and Jane and Mike and Noel they hugged us. They pulled us close. They circled the wagons. Andy Riddle, Paul Roberts, Adam Katz, these guys were the ones that held me together. Stephen and Holly Davies, I love those two. They're amazing. And if you change the next slide, this is one of my favorite pictures. Chris and Courtney. This is one of my favorites. The next one. Paul kind of became my guy. He became my guy because he was the guy I could call and we could just not talk business, we could just talk life. And he's been just a huge gift to me to be able to have the relationships that we have here. You can move on to the next one. I got to spend time with Spencer and Andy. The coolest thing I ever had was being able to get guys. It's cool when you can get to do cool stuff. And this is in Spencer's caveman days. But the cool part was that, guys, it's cool when you can get around and do neat stuff with the people that you really are grateful for and appreciate. But it's even better when you can get your children and your downline around them. That's right. Thank you. I'm grateful. When Jeff Bright was talking earlier, and he talked about, try to be what you want by embracing who you were. I spent a lot of my time, and even in the last, so just I'm kind of skipping around here, but in the last 5 years, a lot's changed in my life. So good news, my wife got clean. It was amazing. I'm super grateful. My girl's mom is free from drugs. Yep. Unfortunately, there was a lot of just damage to the relationship. I'll tell you that. It was tough. So after 24 years, we ended the marriage. And I will tell you this, that when everything goes sideways in your life, you need to know who your foxhole buddies are. My foxhole buddy was the first two men I called as soon as it happened. Was I called Andy Albright, I called Mike Leventovich. And I told them what happened. And the best thing was that they said, hey dude, whatever you guys choose, we got your back. And for me, that was music to my ears because I realized I wasn't being judged. So I had run away from judgment for so long that I realized I had been listening to lies in my own head. And I don't know and maybe none of you have bad monkeys in your head, but I got a lot of them. So what I realized was that we do get to choose our own life story. And we get to control how we react to things, and we get to control who is in our corner. So if you're wondering, hey, I'm here, I'm thinking I'm going to sell some insurance, I'm thinking I'm going to make some money, dude, I tell you, the best part about what we do has absolutely nothing to do with money. We are in a relationship business. 100%. Steve and Todd talked about we're in a relationship business on the sales side, and we are. It's about building relationships in the home, but you aren't going to see those clients the rest of your life. The thing is that you will see the people that you're being coached by and the people that you're going to coach for the rest of your life. So choose who you are going to be coached by. We do get to choose all of that. With, for me, when I came on board and I was doing personal production, there's a couple key things I did because it was it was, how do I word this? It was my choice to not recruit. I did everything wrong, but I haven't quit. So that's the key. Okay, the number one key is that I haven't quit. So when I came on, I was focused in personal production, and I did everything I could do to stay away from my house. And the reason I did was that I couldn't deal with what was going on at home. Now, I say that out loud, and I talked to Jane about this, and she says, hey, you know what, it's okay, because you do the best you can with what you got at the time. I had a lot of guilt over all that, because I was spending time away from home, I was spending time away from my kids, but I realized that what I was doing was I was teaching them a work ethic. I was teaching them that if you chase your dreams and you do what's right by your family, you're going to win. My daughter today, my youngest, is a junior in college. She's chasing her dream to be a concert harpist. It's amazing. She's awesome. My oldest girl, she's running a business in Phoenix, and she's living her life as well. Don't turn that off. When I went for personal production, I was focused solely on running appointments, and then Mike got me to recruit. The reason he got me to recruit was that he told me that if I didn't recruit, I was going to be selling forever. Now, I know that we had talked a little bit earlier when Andy Riddle was up here and he was talking about the cash flow quadrant. He said, you got your self-employed income, and I was self-employed for 6 years, and what I did was that I ran appointments, and really, so I'm going to step back into my 5 steps, and I apologize because okay, there it is. All right, so what I did was that I focused on my schedule. So if you guys are wondering how do you personally produce at $20,000 a month, first of all, you got to figure out what your schedule is. Jake Joseph talked about communication. You got to communicate next. If you don't communicate, you will not move forward. If you do not communicate, you will be stuck. So when my hero, my leader, Mike, would call me up and he'd ask me, he says, hey man, what are your numbers for the week? I would tell him, I'd say, hey man, I guess it's funny, Jake, you talked about we ran all the numbers. We made all the dials. I made all the mistakes. Guys, and truthfully, I've spent the last 5 years since that day when I called Mike and Noel. I called Andy and Jane and I said, hey, I'm done with that. And when they circled and they supported me, I realized that, hey, I have a choice. I can move forward or I can stay where I'm at. In a lot of ways, I've stayed stuck for the last 5 years. I've rewritten this talk, guys, 6 times. It's kind of where I'm at right now in my head. I have 6 different talks in my head because I realized I've lived in judgment of me. Judgment kills. If you're looking to move forward in your life, sitting in judgment is a good way to stop all of your growth. If you live in gratitude, thank you, Stephen Davies, for sharing that. If you're living in gratitude, gratitude grows. If you live on what you're focusing on, you get more of what you want. I'm grateful today because my relationships with my daughters has never been stronger. Woo! Both of my daughters have forgiven me because I've asked them. I'm like, hey, I apologize for all the times that I wasn't there. I apologize when I maybe should have protected you more. So I'm going to give you permission today. If you're living in judgment, let go of your judgment. Let go of that, because the only person holding on to it is you. And you can't move past that, because if it keeps pulling you back, it's going to keep pulling you back into that dark spot. When I told Jane, we've been talking about this, and hey, how's your talk going? I'm like, dude, I have no idea how it's going to go. Someone's like, hey, what you going to talk about? I'm like, I think I know. And truthfully, it continues to twist and change. But I realized that what I wanted to come out here and talk to you guys about, Andy, was forgiving yourself. Letting go of the past. Letting go of the pain. We have had so much great training today on the how-to. On the how to sell. I like, guys, the training that we've had on the how-to has been the best I've ever seen. And now as I close this out, I realize that if I can focus on what I'm grateful for, I'm going to be able to grow even greater than I thought. I'm grateful for the relationship that I've been able to build with Brandon. I'm grateful for the people on my team. I'm grateful for everyone that I get to meet, for the handshakes and the hugs and the touches, for the high fives. What I did was that I chose that now I get to let go of the past and I get to focus on gratitude. And I know that as we focus on moving forward, we're going to be able to spend, guys, the best days of your life are before you. If you're wanting to figure out, hey, I really want to know more about sales. Good. Hey, I really want to know more about recruiting. Good. I want you to know more about you. I want you to find your heart and let go of all the things that you decided that you were going to hold on to, all the things that you decided were going to hold you back. I love that I get to hang out with my leaders. I love that my kids get to hang out. We can move on to the next one. But I love it even more as we move through when that's Paul and Val and my youngest and the next one. I love it when the kids on my team get to hang out with the people who I love and who have served me. I love it that we have the next one, Jack. I remember the story of James and Pam telling me, hey, they got to get to spend time with Andy and Jane as they were driving from Nice across to Monte Carlo. Like, James and Pam tell me these stories because they're like, hey, we got to spend 2 hours with Andy. Jake and Veray tell me about stories of the next one. About, hey, here's Jake hanging out with his hero Mike and Andy fishing. It's stuff like this this is the reason that why I get to do what I do. Mike and Noel continue to serve us. And my favorite picture is Andy. This man is my hero. He's my hero because when I met him, I realized that there was someone who had a vision big enough to include me, as flawed and jacked up as I am. And he loves me, and he loves everyone here. And the reason that I know that he does is because he shows up when he doesn't need to. He shows up and he goes out and serves when really he probably shouldn't, because he has other things that he needs to do. But this picture reminds me, go back, this picture reminds me of his heart. His laughter is the best laughter. Like when he laughs, we're in Denver. I don't remember what the heck we were talking about, but we just started laughing, and then to know that I have him and Jane in my life. Now we can go to the next one. And I have this amazing lady in my life, Venus. Watching Andy and Jane and Mike and Noel welcome her into my life. And the last 5 years have been amazing. And I know that the next 5 years, again, it just gets better and better every day. And then now my family is complete. Next one. Because we get to all hang out together. And guys, the last one, please. I want you to think of the possibilities of your life. I want you to think about what else is possible if you just choose your life. Choose to let go of hate. Choose to let go of judgment. Just choose for you, and know that if you focus on being grateful and serving others, that it's just going to get better. So, thank you guys. That's my